Eastern Eye Award for Outstanding Contribution to the Creative Industries 2026 goes to the one and only Sir Anish Kapoor.
So I'm not nervous at all about this interview. Genuinely, we are in the presence of greatness. The greatness. And I'd like to ask you, Sir Anish, there is an incredible composer called Niraj Chagg, and he once said to me, as an artist, life begins at the edge of my comfort zone. And I wonder what you think of that statement, that life begins at the edge of my comfort zone. You can definitely have the mic, sir.
Well, comfort doesn't come to me easily, so that's one thing. The other is that I'm a child. I play. So the question doesn't arise. I go to the studio every day and I have this strange thing which says, first idea, best idea. Just go for it. Don't ponder, don't linger, don't do that funny thing in your head. Let your body do it. My lovely daughter Habiba's here. She knows about that. She knows about playing. Thank you, Habiba, darling. And my wife Amima, without whom I would not do any of this. So thank you both. But I think that is essential. This letting it go. Of course, where we come from, who we are, what this identity is that we've keep figuring today, this evening, is so important today. And yet, we somehow have to be it, know it fully, and let it go.
Does it still, you've just recently got for the Hayward Gallery 5 stars in the Guardian. Does that kind of external validation mean anything to you anymore? When you are creating works of art, who is it for?
Oh my gosh, who is it for? I think sculpture is of course all about the body. Inevitably. And I truly believe that if it works on my body, it'll work on yours. And yet, I also believe that I have nothing to say as an artist. I'm not interested in what I can tell the world. I'm interested in that strange thing that happens when the viewer is in front of a thing and forces them, or is forced by the thing, to bring their own psychic history into play and make the work. It's as if you make the work, I don't. Paul Valéry, I'm very fond of this wonderful quote. Paul Valéry, the great French poet, said, "A bad poem is one that falls into meaning. A good poem, therefore, may I say, ladies and gentlemen, is one that sits between meaning and no meaning, in this curious space that asks the viewer to take part, to be, is this art? Why is it art? Am I interested? No, I'm not. Or whatever. And that allows space for the radical, allows space for the new, for the inventive, but overall brings the viewer into play with whatever it is that's being asked. A piece of music, writing, a poem, whatever it might be.
Yeah. That's actually, Sir Anish, that's reminiscent of something Nora Jones once said when I was interviewing her, which is that she will never explain her songs. She said that once you've released it into the world, it is someone else's entirely, therefore she does not want to impose any of that. As you look back on your career, and of course you'll always be looking forward as an artist, but are there now threads that you can see that join your work together that whilst making them, perhaps you didn't?
Somewhere along the way, I came across this thing I've called a non-object. So we live in a world full of objects. Here's one. But somewhere I seem to have tumbled into the idea that in an object is also its non-object, its other side. It's that perhaps that's a very Indian philosophical notion. I'm sure it is. And that is something I keep running into again and again and again. In so doing, I, many years ago, made a thing that was an empty space that I painted dark blue, very dark, Prussian blue. And to my astonishment, when I looked at it after it had dried, the paint had dried, it wasn't an empty space. It was a space full of darkness, full of void, full of nothingness in a sense. I then decided that I was going to make a piece of stone. I got a piece of stone about 2.5 meters, like that tall. You stand a stone up, of course, it's immediately human. And I carved a negative space in it, which I also painted this same dark Prussian blue. Astonishingly, the negative space was heavier than the stone. And I must say, I was floored by that. And that's something I've returned to again and again. It's what happens to us when we close our eyes, of course. There's that other you in there, the one that isn't described by my lovely sari. So I mean it.
In the unsettlingly fractured times that we live in, what is the role and the responsibility of the artist, if indeed you feel there is a role or a responsibility that the artist should have?
Sadly, we are, of course, in huge conflict. That tells us something about where we, the human race, can go, what we can do, what we can't do. Utopian vision seems to be something that we passed through, that we left behind. We have to, as my friend Rana Dasgupta was just saying, we have to find it again. We have to know it. We can't know it intellectually, but we can know it culturally. And I think that is perhaps the unspoken meta-language that hides in cultural endeavor. Our ability to join up with each other, our ability to say that the past is not just something over there, it's also something over here, and that we take part in it and form the language that informs politics, if you follow my meaning. And we have to take part in that dangerous, risky, perhaps even stupid adventure.
So Anish Kapoor, I've been doing this for over 20 years. I've interviewed hundreds of the world's creatives, but I have to say today, I feel as though I have been touched genuinely by creative genius and magic, not in a weird, inappropriate way, just to be clear. And I have to say that we honour you because you have showed us the art of the possible. You've shown all our communities, our children, our sisters and uncles and aunts and everyone, you've showed us what the art of the possible is. I'd just like to finish by asking you, if you were to have, and I'm going to be reductive again, I'm afraid, sir, if you were to have a mission statement, what would that be?
I very much like what you've said through the evening about parents. When I was growing up, my father, bless him, wanted me to be an engineer. It's what we did. It's what we did. Young boys growing up in India at my time were professionals. That's what we did. And my father had somewhere, he hated it, but he had the courage to say, when I told him I was going to be an artist, I was 17 years old, when I kind of knew it, he didn't say, no way. he just sort of said, "Oh well, you're never going to make a living. I'm going to have to find a way. I mean, my father was in the Navy. He didn't have any money, so anyway, whatever. In the Indian Navy at the time, yeah. But he was a hydrographer, which was ocean map making. In those days, it was all about dropping a piece of string with a weight at the bottom to see how deep the ocean was. I love the idea of that, if you like, looking for what's invisible. I feel that's what I've taken on in one way or another. Anyway, voila.
Great to see, if you like, our people celebrating culture, celebrating what is, in a way, a little less accessible, and bringing it to the fore. Really, really important. I'm speaking, especially at this time, in the world today, speaking of the fact that our origin matters, and that it can make a difference. There are millions of British Asians living in the UK and elsewhere, actually, and we have to make that voice, our voice, heard. Very important. It's just such an honor, such a pleasure and an honor. And in a way, a kind of coming home, which is very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.